So, every morning, like every other morning, people are coming up and saying, "How you doing? How you doing? How you doing?" And my answer this morning was, "I am a work in progress." Now, that's really true every day. It seemed a little more true this morning as I've been getting up and trying to wake up and be present. And being present for me isn't all that hard anymore. My body at 70 keeps me very present a lot of the time with every move I make, So yesterday, I'm going to work the week backwards. Yesterday, I fell asleep at 6:30. And normally, in the past, I would have stopped myself. I would have said, wait, if I fall asleep at 6:30, I'm going to wake up, a couple hours from now and then not get sleep for the night. And here, it was very clear from my soul's intention, which I talked to you guys out a lot, that I'm just going to let my body do what it's doing. And I fell asleep at 6:30. Did wake up a couple of times, but fell right back to sleep and didn't wake up till 7 o'clock this morning. Now, that's a night's sleep. Right? And so, obviously, my body needed that, and it's emotionally been a very interesting, fascinating week for me of practice and growing edge all week long. And sometimes it doesn't have to be the physical things that wear you out. Sometimes it's the emotional things. And I realized that what I've been going through this week is something Pema Chodron talks about a lot, which is when you are in that in-between place, you haven't fully gotten to your next level of enlightenment yet, but you're no longer at the last place you were, you're somewhere in between, it can feel very groundless. And I have felt very lost this week. But because I'm in this practice, I've been able to constantly remind myself, I'm not lost, I'm only exploring. That's a line from a Janice Stanfield song that I love. And so I kept reminding myself that, okay, it's, those feelings of loss, that sad, that little bit of depression that was kind of kicking in all week long. I just kept going, wait a minute, I know this place, I've been here before. I know what this looks like. It means I'm kind of moving to my next level, and how I get there will take its own time, and I don't get to decide. And you don't either, right? If you get deep into this work, you could think you're going along, right? You're going along and things are getting better, because in foundations class, they certainly do. People notice your life starts taking on, a new sense of solidity. But then at some point, that solidity then falls away like the sand underneath your feet. And then you're like, whoa, what happened? What happened? And what's happening is the next layer and the next layer, because that's how it goes. We don't get to choose this stuff. We get to choose how we are with it. But if you're going to walk this path, what I've come to call the growing edge path. And the growing edge path is when you intentionally go look for what is your next place of growth, your next edge, your next whatever it is, if you get triggered, if you're upset about something, that's where your edge is. If you go through an entire week of, this was just hunky-dory and everything's wonderful, you did not go looking for your growing edge. Now, am I saying you ought to go look for a growing edge every single week, every single day of every single year? No, we all deserve a break once in a while. But there is something to this work that needs a consistency, that if we don't apply, we actually don't wind up at the next level, we wind up back where we were. Because that's where it felt safe. That's where it felt secure. That's where logic kicks in. This is reasonable. A lot of folks go for reasonable. You've heard me talk about that before. But if you're feeling lost and you really want to get to the next step, you've got to recognize that's actually what's happening. And that's what was going on for me this week, twice this week. Once in the shower and then once just sitting at my computer my heart just went boom and burst open, and I started sobbing incredibly and fell to my knees and put my head to the floor, and the only thing I could think of was thank you. And it was wild, all the tears and the way the week unfolded, the way I could see what I was looking at in those moments of how the week unfolded and what it meant to me and what it meant to how I am being in this world. And it touched me at such a deep level, and it reminded me that it is only when our heart breaks that our heart can open. Though lots of times what we do when our hearts break is actually close it. And I've talked to you guys about the open-hearted and the closed-hearted lesson. And I read something from Pema Chodron this week. And by the way, I am loving this book. She's got so much that I'm going to do in the summer a 4-week book study on it. It's called The Places That Scare You by Pema Chodron. I'm loving this book. So we're going to study it all together, anybody who wants to, with me over the summer. But anyway, she tells a story. A woman wrote her, an American woman wrote her when she was in a Middle Eastern small village and being yelled at and screamed at by the villagers about what an oppressor the Americans are. And it looked like things might even get violent. Her life was in danger and she was scared. And so, but what happened for her was as she started to recognize, she fell into this place of all the women throughout history who have been oppressed, who have been abused. She could feel that what was happening to her has happened to women throughout the ages, and felt the compassion and love for that, to all these women that it has always happened to. And through that, felt the compassion and love for the villagers who were actually yelling at her because they had been oppressed. And so in the moment where her life was in danger, she was able to get the open-hearted lesson of being in a place with her growing edge where she could feel the compassion for all of it. And it shifted her right then and there. She was still afraid, but didn't have that same kind of like closed, I got to get safe and I got to be protected. It was more like, I am one with you. And when I speak about how we are powerful, creative, spiritual beings, that's what I'm speaking to. Not that she did get out of that safely and that all worked out, right? Because what we embody manifests. And so she shifted in here and it showed up out here. So she wound up being safe. And so that's what's possible when we get into this practice of remembering who we really are. We lose our sense of finiteness. We lose our sense of that somehow we're alone in the world. We lose our sense that we're individuals and not somehow part of a collective. We are individuals. We are having our own experience. And it's part of a collective of all of us in this oneness. It's not just a word on the wall. It's what we actually can experience. What I've been experiencing more and more as I open to allowing the groundlessness and the sense of lostness. I'll just allow it. Just go, I know I'm not lost. It may feel that way. It may even look that way. But something else is going on here that's larger than this. And if I can hang in there with it, if I can breathe into it, then things can shift. And they will at their own pace. And I can't rush them. Even though, if you're in that space, you're like, geez, I wish this would shift now. Because this feels like crap. But that's what it feels like sometimes until you get to the other side of that, and all of a sudden you're having this experience of, oh my God, this is amazing. And it's, so there I am, like on my knees, and I'm going, wow, this hurts like heck, and yet it feels amazing. I feel so connected. I feel so at one, right here, right now. I get to have that. It was amazing. to feel that, to be in that, and then to go, whoa, this is what's possible to feel all the time. This is what I get to open to, because it's been happening more and more. In the past 6 weeks, it's happened, I don't know, 6, 8 times. So it is happening for me more and more. This is not something that's like gone on through the years. This is very new for me. And so I'm experiencing it going, whoa, this is different. I'm a work in progress. I'm really clear about that. You know, there's something shifting all the time as I stay in this work, as I'm willing to be in this place of, okay, what's up for me next? What's up for me next? What's up for you next? What's up for you next? Are you willing to take a look at, instead of resting in, rest a little bit. I'm not saying don't rest. I slept 12 hours last night. Oh, so I'm not saying don't rest, but at some point it's time to take on the next edge. It's time to really be with that. The edge, one of the edges I'm with is turning 70. This is really freaking me out. I didn't even know I was going to make it this long, and now here I am, and I'm like, oh my God. And so, Norm and I are at the coffee shop on Thursday, and we're having a great time. We're laughing like crazy. And there's this table next to us where all of a sudden this woman yells at me. She goes, "Stop it! You're being too loud." Right? And what flashed before my eyes was not every time, I'm sure there were lots of times I don't remember, but there were all these times from being a little kid to people yelling at me about being too loud. Now, I know that's hard to understand. But it all, and what I got to see in, like as a flash, was all the different ways I responded to that through the years. And some of them were, we'll just use the mild word of rebellious in terms of my response to that. And so I got to what, and it happened so fast. The whole thing happened so fast. And then all of a sudden I'm just sitting there being who I am now, and just turned to them and said, I'll do my best with that. Because that's who I am now. And it felt so healing. It felt like, wow, look at the journey. Look at all those different ways in which me, who I was being at the time, responded to simply being my authentic self, right? That we can get our backups about it. I've heard people say, I need to protect my authentic self. That is the closed-hearted lesson. That is the lesson that won't get you to your growing edge, right? We don't need to protect who we're being. We simply need to soften and be curious in our joy of who we're being. And be compassionate towards those. I mean, it was clear those 2 women who were upset with me were not in their joy, right? And so we could feel, Norm and I were feeling a lot of compassion around that. Just who, that they weren't getting to have as good a time as we were. And so that's part of the work too. And that's what happens too, is you start feeling other people's tenderness as you allow your own to become visible. That's been my biggest work, I would say, in my life, has been taking the wounds of childhood, taking the wounds of my teenage years, and allowing my tenderness to come back. And allowing that armor that I had built so strongly around me. I'm really good at armor, right? And so it took, some of the walls I built were pretty friggin' thick. We're talking thick walls in terms of me and society and me and anybody. And so just feeling those melting away slowly, gently, being willing to be gentle with myself as I'm allowing. And that's what did it, right? Being more gentle with myself is actually what is supporting me being more gentle with others. Just being more gentle around all of it. And thus allowing for that place of connection in times. So I felt very connected with those women. I felt their pain, their suffering. And I thought, how cool is that? That in this moment, when they're yelling at me, when this woman was yelling at me, I could sit there and feel connected to her the way I did. But I thought, how cool is that? Right? And so that's what I've been doing all week long, is looking at that edge, that growing edge, that place where do I need to grow in this? Where do I need to accept this whole life that I've lived, where it's led me, and not having a clue where it's going? And one thing that Pema Chodron talks about a lot in this book is the purpose of learning how to be solid with yourself, to be the person you want to be in the world, is also knowing you have no clue what's going to happen next. You have no clue what's going to happen the second you walk out these doors. You could guess, you could have an idea, but you don't know. So how are you with that? How comfortable can you get with the uncomfortability of not knowing what's going to happen next? One of the growing edges for me this week was looking at others being concerned about stuff and then noticing my concern about their concern. Have you done that? Been concerned because somebody else was concerned about something? And then I realized that once I did that, then my consciousness was the same as theirs. Instead of being in that place of connection, of joy and trust. That people get to have whatever emotions they're having, and the second we think they ought to be different, the second we think they ought to shift, the second we think that somehow what they're doing isn't exactly where they're supposed to be, we're now doing that too. We're now at the same spot that they are, that we were thinking wasn't a good spot to be in. And so I had to watch myself this week. That was a real growing edge for me. During the week, am I buying in to thinking that somehow this ought to be different? These people ought to behave differently. This ought to be different. And then going back to, wait a minute, who am I being? How often are you willing to go, wait a minute, who am I being now? As whatever they're doing, whatever circumstance is going on. You're looking at the news. Maybe you're somebody who's not very happy with how Trump's acting. Or Carney or whatever is going on in the political world, and you look out and you go, I don't like what's going on there. Are you willing in that moment to ask yourself, who am I being now? That somehow I think this ought to be different. That somehow I'm right. That this should play out the way I think it ought to play out. The way I think it ought to be. Instead of going, okay, there's something here for me. That is my question all the time to myself. What is here for me? This is, since I'm the one upset, since I'm the one that's not in that enlightened space right now, what is there in this moment for me? So when I look at myself, I go, I'm a work in progress, man. Because I'm still having to ask those questions. It's not like I'm at the end of the road going, oh yeah, I'm the enlightened being now. This is calm. I keep imagining what that would be like. But in the meantime, what I'm doing is keep asking the question, what is here for me? What is that growing edge here for me so that we can grow, so that I can grow, so that I can feel more connected? Because the more connected I feel with whatever it is you're sharing with me, the more we're at one with that, the more we get to play together in this world where you're okay, I'm okay. You know, there was that book that came out in the 70s or something, I'm okay, you're okay. I don't know, I never read the book, so that's the only thing I know about it. But I do understand the idea of connecting, of compassion, of kindness, of love. So I'm being very gentle and kind with myself today, yesterday, the day before, for a few days now, just paying extra care for me, because I know that if I do that, I can show up better for you. And I want you to know that the more extra care you give yourself, then you'll do better at showing up for others. Right? Because that's how it works. The more care we take, the more care we'll give. People get burned out when they didn't take care of themselves first. But when we play in that world of, okay, I'm going to take care here. I'm a work in progress. Is there anybody here who doesn't feel like a work in progress? Just checking to be. So we could say together, I'm a work in progress. Can we say that? Let's try it together. I'm a work in progress. Yeah. And be kind to yourself around that. If you feel lost, it's because you're getting close to your next step. If you're feeling groundless, it's because you're actually growing into your next level of enlightenment. These are real key moments that either we'll jump back to feel the stability again, or we'll be able to move through in a way that we can feel lifted by. That's the choice. Step back, step forward. It's your choice when things feel groundless, when things feel uncertain, when you might feel a little lost. There's a real sense that this is it. This is where we can actually move forward and rise. I know that for every single one of you. I love you. Thank you.